So if you've been living under a rock for the past 24 hours or so, or just have a real life, then you may have not realized that Bethesda has been posting a ton of teaser tweets on their official Twitter account. Now to be clear, because there's always a ton of confusion around this subject, this is the Bethesda Softworks Twitter account. They're behind Doom, Wolfenstein, Prey, games like that. Bethesda Game Studios are the ones behind Fallout and the Elder Scrolls. Their Twitter account has been largely dormant, although one of these teases may actually correspond to a Bethesda Game Studios game, but we'll get a bit more into that in a second. So it seems like this kind of media frenzy or PR frenzy was triggered by that Walmart leak. I'm going to link that video in the little eye in the top right corner. I would recommend watching that video first. If you click on that link, it'll open in a new tab, but I'm going to be referencing that a little bit in this video, so it would just be helpful to have watched it first. To quickly go over it, more or less Walmart leaked a bunch of games that were apparently coming at this E3. It was kind of controversial as to whether or not that was actually an official leak or not, but one of the games that actually stood out from that leak was Rage 2. Rage was a game originally released back in 2011, published by Bethesda Softworks. And although a lot of people really enjoyed and liked that game, it wasn't really a critical success, and a lot of people kind of have ignored it since then. And for sure, nobody was expecting a Rage 2 coming anytime soon. It just seemed like it was a dead franchise, and Bethesda has moved on to other things. The interesting part about this is, it seems like Bethesda took that leak as an opportunity to actually start capitalizing on the new publicity for Rage 2. They had their official Bethesda account start responding, they had Pete Hines start responding, and even the official Rage account that had all of its tweets deleted and was dormant for many years now. So more or less what I'm trying to say is it seems like that leak may actually be genuine, and we'll get a bit more into that in a second, and Bethesda saw this as an opportunity to kind of control the narrative and actually just start teasing their game and giving a big response, so a ton of news coverage is around Rage 2, not just the other games. And as I went over in yesterday's video, they were successful. A lot of the coverage of the Walmart leak did have Rage 2 in the title and was talking about that game. So it seems like as a follow-up to all of that, Bethesda has begun teasing quite a few different things on their official Twitter. As of right now, we got 4 pretty ominous looking Twitter images, and I'm going to break down what each of these actually mean, and more or less what the community's current speculation about them are. So when we got the first image, a lot of people just assumed this was a confirmation that we'd be getting a Rage 2 announcement on May 15th, or at least something else on May 15th, that being this coming Monday. The reason for that being, in the Big Ben picture, the clock is at 5:14, as well as it has a similar color scheme to what the Rage Twitter account responded to Walmart Canada with. It has that same pink vibe, and all around it just looks like, okay, so this is going to be a Rage 2 announcement of some sorts. But then we got a bunch of the other tweets, and that actually changed things a little bit, so I'll just show you them all real quick. The most notable part about the second one is, of course, the 5:14 also appears on that one. And then for the kind of cross-street one, I'm not actually sure what this is. I feel like this is the most confusing tweet out of the bunch. So I'm just going to keep things nice and short, and more or less what the current sentiment is that actually all 4 of these different images correspond to different games, and we're going to be seeing a teaser or announcement of some sort on May 14th. I don't know for all of these games, but for something. If you want to take part in the speculation yourself, the Bethesda Softworks subreddit is where a lot of this conversation is going on. It's a great place to actually get involved and read about this. But the idea here is that pink doesn't necessarily correspond to Rage, as it was kind of suggested by their initial tweet having all pink lettering and then the teaser image actually having pink all over it. But rather what pink's going to correspond to is the theme of Bethesda's conference as a whole. So like last year in 2017, they had a space theme for some weird reason in the background, but largely the overarching theme was Bethesda Land. So this year, somehow they're tying in pink. Maybe that'll be the big thing in the background of the conference. And thus, in turn, pink appearing in each of these individual images doesn't correspond to Rage 2, but rather just corresponds to Bethesda, or more specifically, Bethesda's E3 conference. And one thing to actually somewhat back this up is someone actually found that they gave away this little Doom action figure a week ago, and again, you couldn't buy this, apparently it was just a giveaway, and that little action figure actually was all pink, which obviously does not really mesh with the color style of Doom overall. It definitely is something that kind of stands out and looks a little weird. So perhaps these little action figures are just following the color scheme of their E3 conference. So with this running theory, what do each of these individual images mean? Well, the first one of Big Ben and the pink clock, a lot of people are thinking may correspond to something new for Dishonored. Dishonored doesn't take place in a real-world setting, but is heavily based off Victorian Europe. That is by far the weakest link here. This could be for a game we've just never heard of, maybe a totally new IP by one of the studios at Bethesda, but largely what people are getting from this image is that it actually is going to be an announcement on 3/14, and maybe that's corresponding to something like a Dishonored 3. And also really interesting, if you actually count the amount of minutes between the minute hand, so that's going to be the bigger hand if you didn't know that, to where the pink actually starts, so all the way at the other other end where there's just that really odd line drawn that is actually going to correspond to the number of days between yesterday, because that's when this tweet was released, and Bethesda's E3 conference. It's not revealing much, but definitely something really interesting that is also a part of this image. So as much as I want to think the second image corresponds to something like Starfield, what I think is a lot more likely is actually the Prey DLC. A new Prey DLC taking place on the moon or in outer space in some sorts has been teased quite heavily by the official Prey Twitter account. They've posted pictures of the moon in the past, and all around it just seems like this is really going to heavily correspond with some of the stuff we've seen previously to be something related to Prey in outer space. The third tweet again is by far the most confusing, but some people on Reddit actually did some digging and found out exactly where this is taking place. So it's going to be the Tsukiyabashi crossing in Japan, and actually the Sony building is on one of the corners of this. And yeah, I likely just butchered that name, but you know what, that's okay. So again, this one's probably the most unknown. It's not entirely clear as to what anything in the tweet's actually going to mean. Some of the people in the background look kind of weird. Is that just because they were digitally placed there, or is that because they actually mean something? I don't really know. I don't think anyone else really knows at this point. But what is the prevailing theory on this one is it's actually going to correspond to a game that was a work in progress by Arcane Studios quite a while ago, that being called The Crossing. Arcane Studios was purchased by ZeniMax in 2016. ZeniMax is the parent company of Bethesda Softworks, so it does definitely fit things here. And then finally, the last image seems to be the most obvious, and that's going to actually just be Rage 2 at E3. You can see this character here, and if you actually compare it to a screenshot from in-game, there's some pretty obvious similarities between the two, and I again think this is by far the most obvious out of all the tweets out there. But also another really interesting indication of this is seemingly this confirms the Walmart tweet. I mean, if Walmart somehow luckily just guessed Rage 2, unless it was a conceded effort between Walmart and Bethesda, that leak from Walmart did correctly confirm Rage 2, and Bethesda jumped on the opportunity to actually start their PR campaign around Rage 2. So again, what I'm saying is some of the other games in the Walmart tweet are kind of confirmed right now. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll see them at E3, but a new Assassin's Creed game, a new Gears of War game, a new Splinter Cell game, etc, etc. So now, if you haven't watched that Walmart video, it'd be kind of cool to go watch through it, because a lot of the stuff in it is probably coming. But of course, before we finish things off, a huge disclaimer, all of this is heavy speculation. It seems like on Monday, May 14th, we're actually going to be finding out a lot more about all of this, so I will definitely keep you guys up to date. I'm going to be following Bethesda's Twitter pretty closely. Kind of unfortunate that they're doing this all during finals week, but you know, whatever. Gotta do what you gotta do. And if you're actually watching the Twitter account, it seems like they're posting images on 4 or so hour intervals. So a few of the images were 4 hours apart, and then another one was 8 hours from the previous one. So I'd actually keep an eye on it, and I think in the next couple hours, depending on when I get this video uploaded, there should potentially be another image, but maybe they're just done at this point. So that's largely going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys enjoyed, you could subscribe to this channel. I'm really trying to push towards 250,000 subscribers, but also if you want to get more involved, you can follow me on Twitter and watch some of this happen in real time. I've been retweeting all these tweets, and again, you could just kind of stay up to date as it happens, or have a Discord or my merch store. But of course, before we end things off, we actually do have today's psychology fun fact of the day. Today I'm actually going to talk about what corresponds to a good team. If you guys actually watched yesterday's video, I talked about how having quality or good coworkers is one of the biggest indicators as to what will keep people at jobs over the long term. But now that you got a bunch of people at your jobs, you have to put them together in the right match, and having a good team of different people is always essential. So Google wanted to find out what exactly was the formula for this. They brought in psychologists, sociologists, a bunch of different very highly paid people that were very specialized in their fields and pretty smart. So they spent millions of dollars, it took a few months, and the result that Google found was the way you can actually construct ahead of time a really good team is, well, you actually can't. Yeah, they found out that there is no way to predict what's going to make a team work well together. It's just going to happen. But then if you actually find it, if you actually get that magic in a bottle, you shouldn't break that team up, which I feel like is pretty self-explanatory. Like, yeah, if you find a good team, don't separate them. I personally found this to be quite funny. I mean, it's pretty unfortunate for Google because, again, they spent literally millions of dollars in trying to figure this out and came up with nothing. But they actually found a few things, and I mean, they're fairly self-explanatory, but I'll share them with you. More or less, they found that dependability on other team members is, you know, that's a good thing to actually maintain teams over the long term. Having clearly set roles and goals so you know exactly what you have to do and when you have to do it. And this one was actually a big one, that each member has significance on a team. So there's not like one person doing more work than another person, or one person just not doing a lot of the work. Another really big one, psychological safety. So not being afraid to ask other people in your group dumb questions. That's another really big one that I feel like a lot of people might miss. If you're not really receptive to questions, there's definitely going to be something you miss that someone else sees but thinks it's a dumb question to ask about, so it just never gets addressed. That's what what Google found to be some of the things that actually correspond with good teams, but they can't actually force those, and there is no indicator as to what would create a good team. Either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Hopefully you guys are enjoying. As always, I thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.